What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction. Back to start a new playlist within the rave electronic genres that I already react to. Which is to say, we're going to start reacting to a series of very early rave tunes. Which is to say, I'm going to designate anything early rave as like before 93. So like 92, 91, 90. And in particular, there's a bunch of tunes from 91 that have not only been in my brain for a little while, but have come across my radar recently. I was talking to a friend of the channel, Tassos, about them. And yeah, again, I started going to parties in late 96, early 97. So these tunes are before my time. Now, I listen to Beethoven and he's way before my time. So eventually, curious about different genres and artists and so on, including those who I became a fan of for music they had made in the mid-90s, when I really started to go to parties myself. So eventually I sought out some of these early tracks, and although I'll admit, music before 93, even today, still tends to sound a little dated to me, and some of the genres that were big, like that, what's called like rave, or indeed old school hardcore, it was just called hardcore at the time, now I would call it breakbeat often with like keyboard riffs. Again, that stuff in some ways sounds dated to me, but I become more sympathetic to stuff from like 92 and 91 recently. So again, after talking to Tassos, we were thinking it would be a good thing to start an early rave playlist. So, and in fact, this is a really interesting one. I've given my brother credit, and rightly so, on a number of occasions for essentially helping in the early evolution of DJ Shnootz, meaning he took me to my first rave party, which is a small like desert party. And then my first like bigger rave party, which is the beginning of the next year, early 97. It was called Full Circle. It was on an Indian reservation. That was like a pivotal moment for me. And he gave me some of my first mixtapes that I then, caned relentlessly. And, when I bought turntables myself, sought out some of the tracks from. So again, he was crucial into the emergence of DJ Shnootz. But it occurred to me there was a dance or early techno track, an early rave track from several years earlier that I had become fond of, and it had nothing to do with my brother, meaning I heard it on the radio, it really caught my ear, and it was something I always wanted to hear more of. Now at the time I was 11, and the word ass is in the title of the track, and so I couldn't hey, mom or dad, can you help me get this track? It just felt like it was something that I had to find on my own, and for a few years, I just never heard it again, or I didn't find it. So it wasn't until way after I started going to raves and I bought turntables myself that I finally learned the name of the track Dance Your Ass Off, which, maybe I should have known the name because there's a refrain, Dance Your Ass Off, in the tune. But again, this was 91, I was 11 years old, I just heard it on the radio one weekend night and was whoa, that sounds really cool, I never heard music like that. But again, much later I figured out that it was by RTZ, which is a Belgian group, and sometimes they're credited as RTZ Belgium. And yeah, this is an early rave classic. I think a number of people will know this track. There's some different remixes. The version I have, I think, is the single edit, or maybe the radio cut. It's only a little over 3 minutes, but it essentially does everything that longer versions of the tune, just in more condensed form. So let's get it. This is RTZ, sometimes called RTZ Belgium. The track is Dance Your Ass Off, and it's from 1991.
Dance your ass off to the funky music.
Again, when I heard this, I was 11, and I was
dance your ass off, dance your ass off, dance your ass off, dance your ass off.
and I was saying to Tassos, I get it, the vocal is a bit indulgent, but the rest of the tune is hard sonics. And I like the dual layer there, the one that it came in with, and now this funkier, distorted version. That's what I'm looking
Dance your ass off to this funky music.
It's a charging tune though, a lot of stuff I know from 91, 92, it's not quite this. Oh. want to party now. This is really the part that when I was young, I was like, oh my god. I guess I was always primed to like hardcore. Like, I feel like it's a very hardcore thing.
Dance your ass off. Dance your ass
It's a banger.
Dance your ass off. Dance your ass off. Dance your ass off. Dance your ass off. Dance your ass off to the funky music.
Now again, a number of other versions will go longer than that, or like it doesn't get to that point without like another interlude. It'll go back to that burn, 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 burn. It'll go back to that section again. But again, I like all that I love about the tune is in this version. So even though as a DJ I would want a longer track, this feels like, you know, a fair version to do for the reaction. So again, I think it's a classic. If you go look at the YouTube video, there's like, you know, I think there's like 20,000 likes, over like millions of views. So, you know, it's certainly a tune I think people remember. And again, it was technically like the first dance techno related track that caught my brain and like really made me interested. Now, it took a few years to get back to that music, and admittedly in between 91 and 96/97, when I really started to go to rave parties and get into dance music, I discovered punk rock, and I've talked about that in punk rock reactions. That was like a revelatory thing. It was like literally life-changing. So admittedly I went off on a different path for a few years, but I found my way back to dance music, or unce music as some of my friends called it at the time, who didn't go with me to rave parties, but were, you know, into punk rock and other things, and like, oh, you're gonna go to one of your unce party music, or unce music parties? I was like, yes, I am. And again, eventually, I don't remember exactly when, it probably was like late 90s, early 2000s or something, but I finally figured out like what this track was called, and it was like, oh man, like I remember that, like little did I know like that I would, you know, end up being really into this music when I heard that way back then. So really top tune, felt like the appropriate one to start this deep dive with, but again, I have like 4 or 5 other tunes from 91 that are just lined up to go through, so we'll go through them all. Let me know what you think of this one. I do apologize, Luca, but at this point I am going to have to pick you up. I will put you right back down, and we will both see you next time. Peace.